Okay, so this is this is class 8, art and visual perception, and this turns out to be the last class of this term. So I sent you something about the next class, which will be in the spring, and it would be great if you could let me know if you're going to continue or not continue, or you just don't know. Maybe if you could get back to me in the next 2 weeks, let's say. I thought this class was really exceptional. And then whenever I say that, someone is going to say, someone always says, well, that's what you say to all the classes. And 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 that might be true. That might be true.
True.
But this class had the best writing. Okay. The writing was very pared down. No one really meandered. No one made polemical arguments. No one was histrionic. Everyone was really to the point. Now, in the last class, something happened. I'm not sure how many of you were aware of this, but something happened which seemed to me to be quite emotional for one of the speakers. And I found it very moving. And so I would like to tell you something that it made me think of, but I'd like to also say or mention that I'd like to dedicate this class to art and emotion, which I think is a nice combination, art and emotion. So in 2011, this very large painting of mine, the Fulbright triptych, was on exhibit at the German consulate. And after it was there maybe about a month, a really striking article came out in the New York Times about the exhibit and this painting. I mean, like an amazingly well-written article by Roberta Smith. So I decided to spend part of a few days each week for 2 or 3 weeks after, just hanging out there. And it's amazing how many people read that newspaper and came down simply because that reviewer wrote about this painting. So there were many, many people who came, and I remember one incident, and then I'm going to tell you about the incident that I want to tell you about. In one incident, there was a very well-heeled French couple who came, older couple, maybe in their mid-80s, and they spent a long time looking at my painting. Oh, and I should say that I just watched people. I never even interacted with them. Okay, so I watched them, and I found it very interesting. And then every now and then I would introduce myself, but basically I just thought it was interesting to see what took place. So I introduced myself, and the woman who had a strong French accent, she said to me, "You see the flag on the outside of this building?" And I looked. This was right in the lobby. I looked out and I saw the flag, and she said, "If it wasn't for your painting, I would never step foot in this building." Right? This is a German consulate. So now we're getting to the person I wanted to speak to you about. So a woman came who was very distinguished looking, and I happened to know who she was because a book came out on this painting, and the book had a woman did publicity for the book who was connected with Simon and Schuster. And this woman somehow in a conversation with me had mentioned this woman and said that she was a legendary editor. So she came and she introduced herself, and I knew who she was, but I didn't let on. And she was very involved in the painting, and we were talking. She was really looking at it, and so forth. And then some other people came in, and I told this woman, I said, just let me excuse myself and let me say hello to these people here. And she just sat down and was looking. And it's amazing. I mean, someone look at this painting for like 20 minutes or a half hour or more. And so I went back to speak to her, and I noticed that she was crying. I mean, really sobbing. And so I thought maybe something happened to her that day, or something happened with her marriage or a personal issue and so forth. It was very sort of awkward. And I came over to her and I said, is everything okay? I mean, are you okay? And she said to me, why are you asking? So I said, well, you look very upset. And so she said, and I'm telling you this not because of me, I'm telling it because of her. She said, this always happens to me when I'm in the presence of a great work of art. And there she was sobbing. And I looked at her and I said, well, just feel what you feel and go with it. And I just sat down, and she just eventually got her act together. And but I think there is actually a syndrome, it might be called Stendhal syndrome, where someone has a strong response to a work of art. Stendhal, from the writer Stendhal, Stendal. So anyway, I was very moved by what took place, and I thought of that, and there wasn't time to describe it, but it stayed with me. So I think we should start. And Kristen, I see Kristen, you're here. So we're going to start with you.
Oh, okay.
Okay, and I want to just see how I do this. Oh, okay. So, okay. So, Kristen.
Oh,
Those are not my images.
oh, Simon, they're mine, Kathy.
Oh, Kathy. Okay, we're starting with yours.
Okay.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Kristen, I'm sorry. I got K and K. So
No problem.
K and K.
Okay. All right. Of course, these are Felix Nussbaum. In the self-portrait with Jewish identity card dated 1943, we see the figure of Nussbaum placed low on the canvas as if he needs to move quickly out of the frame. He looks out at us with a furtive glance and a wide-eyed fear while flashing his Jewish identity card and the Star of David on his coat. The background shows a decrepit concrete wall, filthy and cracked, imprisoning the figure. The sky is dark and foreboding, yet a small patch of blue sky breaks through, symbolizing possibly a sliver of hope. Likewise, the only other living thing in the painting, the tree, has all of its branches cut off except one with white blossoms, again, a symbol of hope. In the painting, The Organ Grinder, also 1943, we see a centrally placed figure whose gaunt face shows a look of resignation. Death is inevitable. His relaxed pose belies the horror of the landscape behind him, with human bones strewn on the ground and the torn, shredded black flags on broken poles hanging from damaged buildings. Once again, we see a dark, ominous sky, but sadly, this time, without the sliver of blue sky, which had symbolized a glimmer of hope.
Okay, I particularly like your phrase about a quick exit. Very good, very good. So now Len, which is these two.
Okay. These are two photographs by Henri Cartier-Bresson. On the left, Bresson said of this photograph, "I was walking behind this man when all of a sudden he turned around." Marseille, France, 1932. And of the photograph on the right, Bresson said, "This is a group of children playing amongst rubble, Seville, Spain, 1933. The photographs of Henri Cartier-Bresson have two layers. The first layer is the story told by the image, what we see. The second is the story of how the photographer stalked and bagged his shot. Consider the man of Marseille. We see a gentleman in midday travel, prepared for inclement weather with an umbrella and warm cloak. He enjoys a cigarette extending from a fashionable holder. A proper bowler protects him from the damp. He pauses for a moment of reflection. Or does he? In a prequel story, the photographer strolled this esplanade in the days, weeks, or months preceding this moment. He was struck by the sweeping verticality of trees extending skyward, a sidewalk in parallel vanishing to the horizon, benches and automobiles dotting the periphery, moving both toward and away from us. Bresson could have photographed this magnificent landscape and called it a success, but he is a hunter, and his prey is not just the setting, but the humans that inhabit it. They are his second landscape, and not just their mood and temperament, but how they inhabit the space.
Well said.
Bresson creates an image where the man defines a human landscape, a cartography formed by the sharp horizontal of his bowler, the arcs of his umbrella and cloak, the protrusion of his cigarette holder, even the arc of his mustache. They define a figure who is as much mountain as man, as much landscape as portrait. Bresson surely cleared his throat or shuffled his feet too loudly to encourage the man to turn, the assassin. Similarly, imagine Bresson's delight to discover this extraordinary Seville hole in the wall, revealing the rubble inside. What a theatrical composition per se, but the stillness of the image did not satisfy. He scouted the scene in advance to learn how humans inhabited it. He observed children at play, and not just any children, but a diverse and boisterous group intent on extracting maximum pleasure from the barren surroundings. What patience it must have taken to await this shot, like a deer hunter in a perch, brimmed hat tipped down, silent and waiting for the return of children's laughter, signaling that the shot had arrived. Bresson shows us that an artist can stalk his prey like a hunter, and that the distinction between a landscape and the people that occupy it can be as malleable and indeterminate as the chicken and the egg.
Very good.
Terrific. Um, uh,
So true.
you know, just a few quick responses because I want to make sure everyone goes. Your voice is a repeated voice that I hear either in your speaking voice or in your written voice, but I hear it over and over again, the same voice. And when I saw the picture of the man on the left, I personally thought, what are you going to write about? I mean, this seems kind of like down the middle. You know, what are you gonna say about this? Okay. And story and stalking.
I was trying to look slowly. Normally when I come from a perspective of like how the work emotionally moves me, but I enjoy when other folks talk about, you know, seeing things slowly. And I was trying to kind of take that approach this time.
Well, you did great.
Well, I love the man in the cloak. I mean, I think he's just out of this world fantastic.
A man defines a human landscape.
Indeed.
Well, this is terrific. So the next one I see is Alan, which is this one.
Right. So this is also Henri Cartier-Bresson, both of them. The one on the left is a photo that was taken at the Peter and Paul Fortress on the Neva River in Leningrad, now, of course, St. Petersburg in Russia. And the year was 1973. On the right was a photo taken in, I'm hoping I pronounce this right, Cyclades, Greece in 1961.
That looks like a painting.
It does. The two photographs are similar in that they are scenes, excuse me, of architecture with people. The people, while giving a sense of scale to the photographs, do much more. In the photo on the left, we see a prominent, almost naked, bald man contrasted against the dark stone of the fortress. He's facing the wall, and one is not certain what he's doing. On the right of this photo, we see mainly typical people dressed in dark coats against a light sky. Halfway toward the bridge, there appears to be another man who is topless, leaning against the stone wall. Perhaps some ritual or rite is involved. The textured gray pathway ties the two sides of the photo together. The viewer's eye is first drawn to the naked man, casting an eerie dark shadow on the wall of the fortress. He seems to be out of place here. His shoes are on the ground at his right, and there's a bag, presumably containing his clothes, on the left. In contrast are the normal people walking along the river. As a result, the scene is transformed to one of surrealism. The viewer's eyes wander down the path along the river to the bridge in the distance, only to return to the figure of the naked man. He is elevated on what may be a towel, so he appears to be floating above the surface of the ground, rendering the scene even more surreal. The photograph taken in Cyclades, Greece, is a striking composition of light and dark contrast, which expresses a great sense of depth. The rectangular forms of the buildings, the doors, and the windows are contrasted to the irregular steps and the shadows. These interesting forms are quite striking on their own, but the photograph would not be the same without the figure in the very center of the scene, sneaking up the stairs. One's eyes are drawn from the door on the right to the steps, and then to the buildings on the left, and finally up the stairs to the figure who is the movement in an otherwise, static scene. Comparing these photographs, we see contrasting light and dark areas in both. However, juxtaposed, the photo's areas of dark and light are reversed. The photo on the left emphasizes the figure of the very light naked man on the dark wall of the fortress against the light sky, and the photo on the right is the opposite, with a dark figure in the shadows against the dark sky, contrasted by the white walls of the buildings. Both compositions are very interesting, which are enhanced by the fact that they are in black and white. Cartier-Bresson was known for composing in the viewfinder of his camera when taking photographs. It is apparent that he carefully composed these photos, which have a sense of realism, surrealism, and a dash of unpredictability.
Terrific, really terrific.
Predictability, right.
Really, you know, when I was thinking about the three photographers, I thought of you, Alan, and I thought you would really respond to this artist, to this photographer. And I put a bet in my head, which was, I'll bet you a nickel that he responds to this. Okay. So I won my bet. I need a nickel. I need a nickel from you. I won
Okay.
my bet. Okay. Then the second thing that I think of from your writing, your piece, is that at the very beginning of the class, I mentioned that the writing was the best that I've received. And it seems to me that something is pushing the writing. It's either some of the other writers, or it's the images, or it's the presentations, or it's the conversation. But I could be wrong about this, but I think that whoever is writing is really trying to push it. And I really like that. I really like that. Because you've pushed out to kind of your limit or past your limit, and maybe some of you are even surprised by this. Does that make sense, Alan?
Yeah, no, it definitely does.
Yeah, that's terrific. That's terrific. Okay, so now this is Kathy.
Okay, Henri Cartier-Bresson, excuse me, was an early user of 35 millimeter film and was primarily a street photographer. He used the golden triangle in his compositions, which is a mixture of diagonal lines and the rule of thirds. Bresson's intuitive sense of composition is evident in these two photos. In the image on the left, shot from a worm's eye view, it's clear that Cartier-Bresson was familiar with the Fibonacci spiral. The spiral is accentuated by the heads of school children, spaced evenly like pearls on a string. Bresson makes use of the spiral's curvilinear line to show recession moving into the picture plane. In the photo on the right, also shot from a low vantage point, the zigzag shape of the ascending staircase is the primary focal point and is accented by the dark shapes of the standing figures. In addition to the curvilinear lines of the staircase, this photo shows tremendous movement of line with its verticals, diagonals, and horizontals. In each of these shots, still shots, Bresson, with his keen eye for composition and his courage to take the shot at the, quote, decisive moment, as he put it, we see his mastery of fine art photography.
Nice. That's nice.
Yeah, very good, really terrific.
Yeah.
Kathy, what I said before, do you think I'm right that something about the writing is being pushed?
I think so. I mean, each of us, I think, want to really look slowly, as you know, you focused on that point, and really pick it apart and, you know, not just look at it, but look into it a little bit more carefully. And yeah, I think everybody's writing has been terrific.
When you look at these photographs, do you think these photographs will interact with your art?
I am hopeful. Yes, that's why I think I wanted to take this class so I could really, rather than just look at technique or composition, look more about concept. So yeah, I'm hoping it'll rub off.
Good, good. That's great. That's great. Okay, so this one, I'm a little mixed up. Whose is this?
This is me, Anna.
Okay, okay.
Shall I go?
Yes, yes, please.
Okay. A painting, Luncheon on the Grass, Manet's famous image from 1863, 81.9 by 104.1 inches. A photograph, Juvisy, also known as On the Banks of the Marne, and that was photographed in 1938 by Henri Cartier Bresson. It's 9 3/4 by 14 5/8 inches. When Manet painted Luncheon on the Grass in 1863, it was considered a radical piece, so much so that it was rejected by the Salon of the official French Academy and instead was displayed at the Salon des Refusés, a salon started by artists who were refused entry to the official one. Although it was influenced by Titian's Pastoral Concert and Raphael and Raimondi's engraving of the Judgment of Paris, Manet's painting was controversial during its time. The women were perceived to be prostitutes and not nymphs or goddesses, as depicted in the earlier painting and engraving. This despite the fact that only one of Manet's female figures is unclothed. Nevertheless, there she sits, head to toe, side by side with these two men boldly sharing in the picnic. Manet's impressionistic approach was also ahead of its time, with the figures appearing flat, expressing perhaps that Japanese influence on Manet's work, as well as a whole new approach to the human figure upon the canvas. Manet nicknamed his painting La Partie Carrée, as in a party of four, 2 women and 2 men, with the implication being of a sexual nature. In English, we might say a foursome. Juvisy, photographed 75 years later, might also be nicknamed La Partie Carrée. After all, once again, we have 4 figures, 2 men and 2 women, and at least one of the women seems to have only her underblouse on. There is a casualness to the scene, which also brings us back to the irreverence of the Manet painting. But it was said that it was Renoir's Luncheon of the Boating Party that influenced this photograph, perhaps. There is, too, something impressionistic about the image, and it is quite evident that Bresson was an admirer of the impressionist imagery that he had seen. Like Manet's painting, this photograph was radical for its time. Indeed, it had been commissioned by a magazine, Regards, as a way of documenting how the new government, run by the Communist Party and the Radical Socialist Party, the Popular Front, allowed for the working class to actually have leisure time. And Henri Cartier-Bresson wasn't just doing an assignment, he was illustrating his own liberal beliefs. The image depicts a party of 4, picnicking on the banks of the River Marne at Juvisy, just south of Paris. It captures their joy and their comfort as they share food and wine and appear completely relaxed. The moment is one to be celebrated. This party of 4 may indeed be poor, but they too can sit together in nature, eating, drinking, and enjoying friendship. 2 luncheons on the grass, 75 years apart, but both equally liberated.
Your choice of this theme and the continuity between
Very
the
interesting. Yeah.
is terrific, really terrific. And everything in your writing, just very fine. When I saw these two, it made me think of a painting, but especially the one on the right. So I am intruding with a painting that it made me think of. And you have to understand that this has to all be set up before everyone speaks, because there's no way that I can put this picture on now. But here we go.
Oh, right.
So
Mhm.
if you look at this
Right.
man, if you look at this man here, and this one, I think it's quite connected.
Yeah.
This is a painting by Seurat, and believe it or not, it's a painting he did when he was 24 years old.
Yeah.
And he only lived to be 31. And this is a really great painting, and it's at the National Gallery in London. And it's both very connected with tradition and very avant-garde at the same time. Anyway, I just wanted to show you that.
Thank you.
The next picture, the next grouping I see is this one, which is Anna Marie.
Yes,
Is that correct? Am I correct?
yes.
Okay,
yes,
good,
yes,
good.
that's fine. Okay. Do you mind if I speak about the photograph first?
Absolutely. You do your thing, whatever you want.
Okay, I'm gonna start there. Okay, Simon made a comment regarding the farmer photograph last class by August Sander. That got me thinking. He said, this is very difficult to do. The candidness, the honesty, the communication. And I thought, well, what is difficult to do? Why is it difficult to do? So these questions led me to want to take a slow look. So this is Farmer Sewing from 1952, approximately 10 inches by 7 by August Sander. A man standing alone in muddy soil in a field of many acres. He is in the foreground, and there are vast fields behind him, sloping upwards towards a wall lined with trees. It's a cool day with gray skies. The man, a farmer, is dressed warmly in rubber boots, loosely fitted burlap pants, a thick jacket layered underneath with a white shirt and a black scarf knotted around his neck. A wool cap covers his bald head. He has something of a debonair look to me. Around his neck are straps carrying a large stiff fabric bag that holds hundreds of round seeds. He is gesturing with a handful of seeds. He's ready to drop them so that the planting begins. This is a gesture that he must do 100 times a day. On his perfectly symmetrical face, with his eyes slightly slanted down and his mouth slightly slanted upward, he is focused on the viewer with an expression that communicates that he is a farmer who takes pride in his work. He's being honest and real and an individual. What did August Sander capture? He captured the human connection to those who we will never meet, the dignity of this work as a farmer, and the strength of the people who do that work. So the Edouard Manet standing is from 1868, approximately 14 by 8 inches by Edgar Degas, and it's a drawing in Chinese ink wash and graphite. In this drawing at the age of 34, Degas used the medium of ink wash, which was a medium he adopted from Monet. It was done in 1868, about 6 years after Manet and Degas met in the Louvre and developed a close friendship. There are 7 drawings of Manet by Degas in the Met Show this year. It seems to be a quick sketch taken at a moment when Manet is not looking at the viewer. He is in a relaxed position with his hand in his pocket and ankles overlapped, leaning against something that is propping him up into a standing position. At this moment, he is looking at something, but then again, Manet is always looking. His head and face emerge from a washed out background. We see a beautifully structured, bearded face with eyes focused and mouth closed, observing. The dark jacket and shirt gives the body weight and highlights the head and expression. His long legs painted in a middle value crossed over at the ankles complete this relaxed moment. Degas, I felt, has taken some risk here by contrasting the tones in an unpredictable way. Maybe the unpredictability of the tones with the ink wash was to distinguish himself from Manet's use of the medium, perhaps an indication of their individuality and their rivaling visions. By taking this slow look, I see the whole picture. I see that Degas sees Manet as a friend, an influencer, someone to watch, someone who has something to say. And I believe that's what the slow look is all about, taking the time to see the humanity in others and to allow the work to speak. So I appreciate Simon helping me explore this concept throughout all these classes.
Well, that is really terrific. Thank you. And I think I mentioned this to you before, but if I was you, I would keep a diary of the things you see in art, or the things you read or see in film, or whatever, poetry or anything, because your response to this shows so much consciousness. And so if you agree with me, maybe a high degree of consciousness will allow you to cheat in terms of life. You'll get more of your money's worth. You'll get more of your money's worth.
Okay, yeah, okay. I get you. Yeah, I'll be willing to do that. I like that idea.
Okay, good. So
Thank
the
you.
next one I see is, I think, is Kristen, which is this one.
Yes, those are mine. The photograph is Henri Cartier-Bresson from his time in Mexico City, 1934. It's called Calle, and I will mispronounce this, I'm sure. Quahetemotzen. The painting is by Christian Schad, and it is from 1923. It's oil on canvas, 67.5 by 55.5 centimeters, I wrote down, so not big. And it is titled Maria and Anzun. Again, I will Annunziata, quote from the harbor. Your eye must see a composition or an expression that life itself offers you, and you must know with intuition when to click the camera, said Cartier-Bresson. He knew when to click the camera, as Schad also intuitively knew how to apply the paint to create images that offer something of the lives of their inhabitants. The expressions on the women captured in these two works are direct and piercing. Each of these women are dressed up in their finery, glamorous, showing themselves to the world in a singular moment in time. The Cartier-Bresson photograph was taken during the time he spent living in Mexico and observing the people there. Although he spent much of his time with other artists and writers while there, including poet Langston Hughes, he lived near neighborhoods that were populated with those who may have had a rougher existence. These two women are likely prostitutes, one perhaps amused by the moment, thrusting herself out through the opening of the window, the other challenging the onlooker in her relaxed yet firmly serious stance. Though outfitted in pearls and finery and what some might consider alluring makeup, they are framed or perhaps trapped by their windows that are surrounded by rough, dented, nail-strewn wood, suggesting that life may not be as glamorous as they would seek to imply. The very realistic image of two women by Christian Schad was from a time when he, like Cartier-Bresson, traveled and was visiting a place, Naples, where he spent his time observing and capturing images of the people living their lives in the society. As Schad said, he wanted to show, quote, in great detail, the many manifestations of life on the streets. Schad painted these two actresses in their setting of a theater with tremendous use of light, shadow, and coloring, creating brightness, particularly in their faces and skin, producing almost overly lifelike images of these two women. They are framed as if a photograph of them was taken, a cropped, close-up shot. Like the Cartier-Bresson photograph, one of the women in Schad's painting looks directly at the viewer with serious intensity, bordering on a challenge. The other woman gazes off with an air of more softness, maybe resignation in her face. One can almost feel a sense of great seriousness and perhaps exhaustion in these two. It feels as if both Cartier-Bresson and Schad effectively captured a slice of life and offered a feeling for the people who lived and worked in these places where they were the observers. Certainly, the viewer is compelled to wonder what their lives were really like. Langston Hughes wrote this poem prior to his time living with Cartier-Bresson in Mexico, but perhaps it captures sentiment of the artists who portrayed these people and of these women and the worlds in which they were living. The Dreamkeeper from 1926. Bring me all of your dreams, you dreamer, bring me all your heart melodies, that I may wrap them in a blue cloud cloth, away from the too rough fingers of the world.
Yeah, super, really super, touching, framed and trapped. It really super. Kristen and I had a little conversation on via email, and she was trying to recall an image that I had, a drawing that I had done, and I wrote back to her and I asked if this is the drawing, and she said yes. And then I sent her another drawing, and she said, you should really show this. And I don't like to include my work within this setting, but since it's the last class and not a lot of people are participating in this, I just thought I would include 2 or 3 of these drawings. So this is the first one.
And Simon, can I share what made me think of it?
Yeah, yeah.
I remembered when I saw this drawing of Simon's that he said something along the lines of, I saw this man's face and knew that this was someone I wanted to capture an image of or draw a picture of. And when we looked at the photographs last week, that I was thinking these photographers wanted to capture the essence of these people. And it reminded me of Simon saying that about this gentleman.
Well, I actually took it even further. I took it, this is a way that I learned from this class, even though it doesn't make sense, but I'm learning. And I took it further in that it appeared obvious that there was a connection between this drawing and the other 2 drawings and August Sander. And in that, in its austerity and delineation, almost like in a map, you were creating a high degree of expression. So the second drawing, this that I sent to Kristen, is this one. And Kristen wanted to know who this woman is. And this is a very large drawing. This is like 40 by 50 inches in Conti crayon. very rich blacks. And this woman lived next to us when we lived for a year in Germany. And she lived in a very small apartment, which didn't seem that much bigger than the drawing itself. And she posed for this for a few months. She posed, she was 87 when I did this, and she posed 5 minutes and then sat down for 55 minutes. And then she posed 5 minutes and then sat down for 55 minutes. And then she posed 5 minutes and sat down for 55 minutes. I drew 3 hours straight. And anyway, the third drawing I thought to include is this one. This I think should be a little smaller. So this drawing is a drawing of an uncle of Renee, and the drawing is 7 feet high. And in a number of instances, when we traveled to Europe for a long period of time, one friend or another friend kept some of my work. And there was a family on Garfield Place who kept this drawing. And they had it in their living room. And they said to me that it always felt like there was someone in the living room there all the time. And this is a detail. So anyway, that's what I wanted to show you. The next one I have here.
Thanks
Those are
for sharing.
incredible. Those are
I know. Thanks
wonderful.
for sharing them.
Oh,
Yeah,
They're
it's
amazing. They're
Right.
incredible,
okay.
Simon.
Okay,
I mean,
all
right,
it's,
thanks.
Holy
there are no
shit.
words. I mean,
Oh my
Thanks.
God. Wow.
Really,
man, I know you're a
very nice
master.
of you.
I mean,
Thank you.
I mean
Amazing.
it's
Reagan, thanks a lot.
that first
Amazing.
one of the guy I think is
Thanks.
done in like a liquid graphite. It's amazing. It's just really something.
Actually, let me just go back here, and I want to read something. So if you saw the prospectus for next term, I thought to do a big survey of new objectivity. And so at the beginning of the class, I was showing this book, which I have on new objectivity. And I read a little bit of it. I had misplaced the book somewhere and I was able to find it. So I read a little bit of it, and it has many images of diverse people. And I think that for me, see, new objectivity is sort of as a German art movement, but I think it has parallels in other countries, in England, the United States, Italy. And I came across a quote in here, which seems appropriate. It's from one of the artists, Ludwig Meidner, and it's a kind of manifesto of new objectivity. So he writes, what will matter tomorrow, what I and all others need, is a fanatic, fervent naturalism. It's a really terrific quote. What will matter tomorrow, what I and all others need, is a fanatical, fervent naturalism. Well, thanks for your response to these. I didn't mean to intrude, but I sort of, Kristen sort of asked me about it, and let's keep going. This is Ron's, and this is many of you weren't here when Ron came on at the very beginning, and we were talking about this, and I said that this is pretty amazing. So you take it from here, Ron.
Okay. Actually, the two are reversed. The first one, which is on the right, is an image created in 1931 by August Sander. It's titled Bauernkinder, or Farm Children, Westerwald, and is an unusually composed double portrait with each child standing in the vestibule of their adjoining homes. The children, a bit reminiscent of Tennessee Williams' no-neck monsters, are each paired with an object. The girl holds a ball, and the boy stands next to an Alsatian dog. The second photograph, which you see on the left side, is an image created in 1924 by Edward Weston during his 3-year stay in Mexico. It's titled Tepoztlan, but has also come to be known as Calle Mejor, Main Street, or Pissing Indian. It's a view from an upper level across a roof toward the opposite side of a rustic street, where a man in a bright white hat stands near an array of large adobe or stone bricks. It was actually made on a tour that Weston did out of Mexico City to the colonial towns. I've been a serious photographer since my mid-teens. My deceased wife and I collected art and photography for many decades. I practiced much of my photography as an attempt to experience the creative process underpinning the works we admired. I got my hands wet and my shoulders bruised, practicing with equipment ranging up to large format 8x10 cameras. I came to understand Ansel Adams' comment, "There's nothing worth photographing more than 50 feet from the road." I'm greatly interested in what makes a photograph great. There's something special about a photo which delivers an arresting setting of a unique and transient event. But there's no happenstance in photography. The news photographer Ouija quipped that the secret of his photography was F8 and be there. Elliot Porter observed, "The light is never the same twice." The photographer must not only seize the moment, but create it. Beyond the image per se, there's a magic in the silver print as an object in itself. This magic can only be appreciated in the presence of the object, often then only by viewing the print with a level of illumination very rarely to be found in museums. I'm happy to be able to present from our own collection these two photographs in the flesh. This is the Sander. And both of the pictures were printed posthumously by the sons of the photographers, which is what made them affordable. Their sons, Gert Sander and Cole Weston, adhered as closely as possible to the techniques and practices of their mentors. Both images were captured on negatives in an 8x10 view camera set on a tripod. These were contact printed, as were the originals, because in those days, the photographic paper was still too weakly sensitive to be printed by projection in the darkroom as we do now. As is the common practice, the 8x10-inch prints were trimmed by 1/4 of an inch on all 4 sides to eliminate the distraction of the film holder marks on the negative. The composition of the Sander is all about rectangles. The rectangles of the doorways in counterpoint with the rectangle formed by the heads of the children, by the dog's head, and by the ball. The design pivots around these mobile, the children, the lighting under these circumstances would have required a relatively slow, long exposure. The children and even the dog bear expressions of attentive, perhaps somewhat anxious obedience to the needs of the photographer. The result in the flesh is velvety, dark, and lush, with distinct renderings of the textures of skin, hair, fabric, rubber, and leather. The range of reflective tones in the print run the gamut from the deepest black of the doorway shadows to the brightest white in the boy's striped shirt and the markings on the girl's ball. under good lighting, the deep shadows in the doorways reveal subtle surfaces in the background. Take this one down. And the Weston here is it's also nice to get a sense of their size and scope. The composition of the Weston photograph, created 7 years before the Sander, is remarkable to contemplate. Its design pivots around the one mobile and transient object in the scene, the bright white sombrero of the Indian, which catches full sun as he stands just outside the line of shadow encroaching upon the wall. His sombrero provides the corner for a rectangle with the upper right corner of the photograph. A rectangle with proportions roughly corresponding to that of the photograph as a whole. The remainder of the composition is that of a rhythmic zigzag of roofs, walls, road, and fields, a very Mexican motif. I imagine Weston was intrigued primarily with the zigzag composition and had already set up on the ground glass, which he'd set up on the ground glass of the camera when the Indian came upon the scene, turning a good photo into a great one.
Terrific. Terrific. Really, really very striking.
You can see these things. Well, it's very difficult with they were hard to photograph and they're hard to appreciate unless one's with them. And they're wonderful to live with because one can always discover new elements.
Yeah, terrific, terrific. Thank you so much. I would have a bunch of questions for you, Ron, but I want to keep going. Okay.
Sure, please.
Okay. Okay. So this is Carol.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mute. Hi. Okay. So we have two women. They could be sisters or twins, amazingly alike, although one's a painting and one's a photo, and they were done 3 years apart. Each is seated, body turned away, but faces turned to us. They're androgynous with black dresses, bobbed hair, cigarettes smoked elegantly, eyes looking at or through us. So who are they, and how did they become so similar? On the left is Sonia by Christian Schad, painted in 1928, oil on canvas. It's about 35 by 23 inches. On the right, Secretary at West German Radio Cologne by August Sander, taken in 1931, and it's about 10 by 7 inches. We have two women strikingly similar. Both are secretaries, one at a radio station in Cologne and one, Sonia, at the Romanisches Cafe in Berlin. Each artist creates an iconic portrait of the new woman, Neue Frau, and does it in the same way. She's solitary and confident, androgynous and bohemian, liberated. 1928 to 31, the beginning of the end of the Weimar Republic. Artists were still affected by the horrors of World War I, trying to show society as it truly is. Artists worked in magic reality and or neue Sachlichkeit, new objectivity or new matter-of-factness. Schad was most closely associated with the former, while Sander the latter. Magical reality incorporates magical elements into a realistic painting as if they're normal. But Sonia has none of this and is much more akin to the new objectivity. It is striking that both artists worked to have deep detail in their portraits. Sander, by using a large format camera and often taking as long as 3-second exposures, is able to show every fold of her dress and the light playing on the apparently shiny material as well as the faint design on the dress. Schad is also able to show the folds of the dress. His skin tones are perfect, realistic. The cigarette pack on the table is almost photorealist. But while a photo is of the moment, a painting reflects. Schad painted Sonia from memory in his studio and has created a symbolic type, just as Sander photographed people as representatives of their type. Although Schad knew Sonia and frequented the cafe depicted, he chose to make her symbolic. While she's in a cafe and some of the other patrons are there, although cropped, she's clearly alone. The new woman of the interwar period had the strength to be alone and to live by her own rules.
Mm.
That's it.
Well, that's terrific. I especially like the last 3 sentences. Carol, I think I asked you, had you seen this exhibit?
Schad, you mean?
The
Oh,
one of Beckman?
No. Oh, the Beckman I saw, yes.
Yes. And did you go to the restaurant?
No, I don't think so. No.
Because that painting by Schad is shown in the restaurant.
Ah, yes, you mentioned that.
There's a
Yes.
big
Right.
there's
Yeah,
a
I
big
didn't have time. I kind of had to wait online a long time to get into the Neue Gallery because they had some tour there or something.
Yeah,
So.
but is a large reproduction
Ah,
of that painting, and this juxtaposition is amazing.
yeah, isn't it?
Amazing.
I mean, yeah, I was struck by both of them. There's so much the image that they all had of this new woman. I mean, and
Yes.
and they're so the same.
The new woman could also be this one.
Yes, absolutely. Is that Otto Dix?
That's Otto Dix.
Yeah.
The
Is that the journalist?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
The story goes that Otto Dix saw this woman in a restaurant, and he was so struck by her that he walked up to her and said, "I must paint you." And she looked at him quizzically, and she didn't know how to respond. And he said something like, "I must paint you. You represent the era."
Ah, there we go.
Isn't that weird?
Yes.
Um,
But you can understand it. I mean, look at these. They represent the era as well.
yeah. Okay, so the next one is this one, which I think is Mary.
Yeah, that's right. So Cartier-Bresson was known as the father of modern photography. He was the witness of the 20th century, as Richard Avedon said, and he had a profound humanity. The first image is one of the most influential of all photographs. So I really wanted to take a look at it. And to me, it's relates as image is poetry. It is visually playful. The man is in the air. He's not quite touching down, but he is about to. There's a geometric harmony, all the elements aligning, the lines, the ladder, the metal brackets from a barrel. There's like repetition and reflection in the mirroring and the shadows. And then the poster up on the left of a dance performance, the figure actually mimics the man in the air. And that's phenomenal to me that was caught. You know, there's also the gates and the rooftops. It's lighthearted, and it seems to bring a smile to everybody I've shown it to. But it is aggressively serious at the same time. It's modern, and I think that's what about Bresson, Cartier-Bresson, was he used the small handheld camera and really kind of broke open the area of street photography. And he also studied and trained in classical art forms. He was deeply influenced by Andre Lotte, I don't know how to say his name, the Cubist artist. And he was also very much influenced by Andre Breton, not so much the paintings of surrealism, but the conceptions of surrealism, with its emphasis on spontaneous expression. It was a break from the traditional and practical uses of photography, and really made open a field for the unintended and unpredictable things to happen. Cartier-Bresson resisted his photos being labeled art, and he claimed that they were merely his reaction to a fleeting situation he had acted on. In 1952, he had the book called The Decisive Moment put out, where he elaborated on his philosophical approach to photography and saying that it is the significance of an event together with form and organization. And with that, he was able to give the event its proper expression. And on the right is a really one of the best known photographs in the world. It's one of the most seen photographs of all time. And it's 1954 Rue Mouffetard, the street where it was photographed. And it's just incredible that what is it about this photograph that it captures everybody. And I think it's just this emotional lightheartedness, this young child carrying 2 bottles of wine, there's 2 girls watching him. There's playfulness and mischievousness, and it feels like the true nature and spirit of the kid. The fast shutter at just the right moment, planning and fusing the temporal and spatial as composition. But it was yet done in a renegade fashion. He would hang out there, like you said, Len, I think you said, stalking his prey, waiting for that moment, and he would catch it. And it's amazing because it was one illicit moment that he would just catch it, and it's like magic. He hid the camera, putting black tape on it and using handkerchief to not make it so obvious. And the phrase, the decisive moment, it literally translates like images on the sly. So to me, it's synchronicity, evoking nostalgia. And the way he summed it up is he said he put his head, one eye, one heart on the same axis. So that's
well done, really well done. I'm not sure if what comes to me makes sense, but I know that Mary is a long-term teacher, and the photograph on the right has something to do with children and being a teacher.
Yes, definitely. He really caught the proud moment. Whether the child was playing the man, it's beautifully caught.
Yeah, beautiful. Okay, the next one here is Frank.
Yeah, these 2 photographs are the one on the left is Lovers Under a Street Lamp by Bresson from 1932. It's about 11.5 inches by 8.25 inches. And the one on the right is Ile de la Cité by Henri Cartier-Bresson from 1951. It's 9.5 inches by 14 inches. Both of these photos were taken in the city of Paris, about 20 years apart. The first is Lovers Under a Street Lamp by Bresson. We see 2 people standing in the shadow of a structure that is next to a street lamp. One can imagine the arm of the lamp reaching out high over the heads of the lovers with the light shining on the boulevard below. This provides the photographer and the viewer with somewhat of a silhouette, but it's actually more detailed than that. We can see a vivid profile of each of the lovers. The woman looking at the man while the man's attention is on something out of view. Although it does not appear that they're looking at one another, The affection that they feel for each other can be seen as she leaves room with her left arm to allow him to put his right arm behind her back. He's wearing a fedora, a jacket, and pinstripe pants, and she appears to be wearing a loose blouse and a long skirt with a pattern, white socks that are rolled down, and shoes with heels. Across the cobblestone street, there's a tree whose trunk is visible directly between the faces of the two people. Given that the woman isn't wearing a sweater or coat, and the tree appears to be full of leaves, would indicate that the night is warm. The warm air, the light on their faces, the physical contact, the expression on the woman's face, and the fact that we don't see anyone else in view gives this photo an intimacy with a feeling of electricity running through it. Even though the clothes are dated, the people are contemporary, and it's a little surprising to me that the shot was taken almost 100 years ago. Their lives have been lived and they're no longer with us, but we have this snapshot of one of their moments together. The other photograph, taken in 1951 by Henri Cartier-Bresson, is entitled Ile de la Cité. It's a photo of the tip of one of two islands in the Seine at the center of Paris. Ile de la Cité, or City Island, is believed to be the site of the original settlement that became the city of Paris. This island is home to two of Paris's most famous religious architectural accomplishments, Sainte-Chapelle and the Notre Dame Cathedral, both built around 800 years ago. However, neither seem visible in this photo. The image was likely taken from the next bridge to the west, Pont des Arts. The water looks calm, and there are a few boats visible. Some pedestrians are on the walkway near the trees of the square de Vert Galant, named after King Henry IV. Past the trees on the triangular tip is Pont Neuf, the name meaning new bridge, but is in fact actually the oldest bridge crossing the Seine in Paris. The left section of the bridge leads to an area of Paris known as the Marais, and the right section of the bridge leads to the latter quarter. There's an interesting composition to this photo with the point of the triangle in the center and the water flowing on two sides. A symmetry emerges. The bridge extends in both directions with lampposts on top and arches below. The buildings on the island fan out behind the trees with pointed rooftops on both sides in the distance. The water, the island, and the bridge stand out in relief against the background buildings that seem to have their details blurred either by fog, a smoky atmosphere, or simply the limitations of the technology in the early 1950s. Ile de la Cité is a special place in the center of an old and historic city. Both Renoir and Camille Pissarro painted Pont Neuf and Ile de la Cité, but they're from other viewpoints than the one we see here. Taken together, though, these two photos tell something of what makes Paris remarkable and wonderful: romance and the historical, beautifully designed spaces.
Terrific, really terrific. You're hired. You're hired.
Well, for what?
Whatever it is, you're hired. Okay, so the next one is
Kathy.
Kathy, I think.
Yes, hi. There you go. Okay. This is how Henry Cartier-Bresson, both of these photographs. Madrid, Spain, 1934. The portrait of the father holding his young child in his arms and a mother holding an infant, the toddler at her side. I could not improve on Lincoln Kirsten, who's described sequences of Henry Cartier-Bresson's work as fresh, elegant, and works of art. Like everyone, I've looked in awe at his work for many years. When I've walked through MoMA photography exhibits and I come to a photograph that draws me in, I immediately recognize it as a Cartier-Bresson and breathe a sigh of relief. The two photographs I chose for tonight were unknown to me and came from a resource I was unfamiliar with. Cartier-Bresson, Documentary Humanist, with a text by Lincoln Kirsten and Beaumont Newell. It was a fortunate find since I hadn't seen several of the photographs included in this collection, as well as the background on him and his broad range of subjects. That he spent 35 months as a prisoner of war in German camps during the war, and that he attempted to escape several times before finally succeeding, gave me insight into his need for immediate access in his work. He doesn't have the patience to wait like Ansel Adams or Edward Weston. He's less interested in the mechanics of the camera. He sees a subject and captures a mood, a lucky chance movement, perfectly lit stairwell, and turns it into art. The two photographs I chose have a similarity I didn't choose deliberately. After deciding against picking the famous ones, these two offered me a feeling of intimacy into the lives of their subjects. I questioned whether the man was protecting his child from danger. The look on his face suggests so. The composition and the shading makes it seem more like a painting. The woman with the child at her side, carefully holding an almost hidden infant, visible under the sheerness of her shawl. Her face doesn't look young, and she is obviously the mother. There's a struggle in her eyes, but altogether, he has framed this photograph so perfectly without the need or interest in cropping or changing anything for what he perceived it to be when he captured it. I love his riskiness, his alertness to humanity, be it playful moments with children playing amid the ruins of war, or the gentleman caught just leaping over the puddle in the playground. His timing is impeccable. His photographs gripping because he somehow always managed to turn everything into art.
Beautifully written. And maybe it's the power of suggestion, but these two images to me connect with current events going on now.
Yes. Of course. Of
So,
course.
Okay.
Yes.
The next one is Rita.
Each photograph is a distillation of what Cartier-Bresson calls the moment. It is with distinct artistry informed by humanity that Cartier-Bresson captures and vibrates that magic moment. In this first photograph, the horizontals, verticals, diagonals, and curves sweep the viewer down and through, along with the sober human figures. The darkly shimmering gradations of gray, shaded by an unseen sky, create a somber, reflective mood. What is a maze without souls wandering within it? What is a staircase without a pilgrim descending or ascending to an unseen and unknown final exit, if there is one? Those unsmiling, darkly cloaked voyagers cool the worn stone until it too speaks to the existential human dilemma. Separated by the narrow labyrinth wall, they are alone amidst others. Only the journey is clear, not the destination. This second photograph is a dramatic antidote to the mood of the first. Cartier-Bresson overexposes the film so that the sky dominates, blazing to whiteness, warming the charmingly weathered stone, which reflects back the light, enveloping the children and their playhouse in quiet bliss. The horizontals accentuate the relaxed, reclining human elements, with vertical columns present only to enforce the integrity of the spacious horizontal structure. With gently watchful adults, unobtrusive at the far edge, the youths are free and secure within the wide walls, not a care in this world or the next. Each has his mate. The playful dog is shared by all. It is a harmonious cast of casually linked souls, comfortably scattered about. There is not yet a destination or quest. There is only the lightness, the heavenly buoyancy of youth.
Really beautifully written. Only the journey is clear, not the destination. uh, beautifully, beautiful phrase, and
Thank you.
these are terrific juxtaposition. These two images, like masterpieces. So the next one is Peter's, and I thought to put this at the end, and I would just again like to say that this has just been an incredible group and very high quality, and this seemed like an amazing piece of writing to end the class with. So, Peter, you take it from here.
Okay. Well, thank you, Simon. And also, well, I had a little email exchange with Simon, and he wanted me to include the last email that I wrote to him as an introduction to my writing. So I will. And I just said in the email, thank you, Simon. For a combination of reasons, I found it very difficult to get started on this. I think the Nussbaum painting just made me so depressed to look at, I could not attach any words to it. Also, my dad was a victim of the Holocaust. He got out of Germany in 1938, 2 months before Kristallnacht. I waited for X to open my writing door, and when it did, well, you have the result. It turned into a labor of love, and somehow I am touched by the effect it had on you. So that was the email. And here is the essay. That's Beckman on the left, and we all know the Nussbaum painting on the right. And so the essay is The Triumph of the Will, the Sorrow and the Pity, and the Psychology of Visual Perception. The Triumph of the Will, a much heralded Nazi propaganda film commissioned by Adolf Hitler and directed by Leni Riefenstahl, chronicles the 1934 Nazi campaign Nazi party in Congress in Nuremberg, which was attended by more than 700,000 Nazi supporters. The film contains excerpts of speeches given by Nazi leaders at the Congress, including Hitler and Rudolf Hess, and is interspersed with footage of massed SS troops and the public's reaction to them. Its overriding theme is the return of Germany as a great power with Hitler as its leader. It became a major example of film used as propaganda and was well received at home. Riefenstahl's cutting-edge techniques have earned Triumph of the Will recognition as one of the greatest propaganda films in history. It won several awards in Germany, France, and Italy. The Sorrow and the Pity is a 4-hour documentary covering the collaboration between the Vichy government and Nazi Germany during World War II. Aptly titled, it unflinchingly depicts the horror and suffering experienced by an untold number of Jews in France during its occupation in the early to mid-40s. As successful as The Triumph of the Will and The Sorrow and the Pity are in getting their messages across, the emotional impact of seeing each of these films pales in comparison to looking at each of these two paintings and their respective attempts to get the same message across. In Beckman's bold, muscular self-portrait, a compressed and powerful energy is captured by his tightly rendered, stocky build and his mean and vindictive eyes staring directly at us. His stare and his conservative but fashionable attire makes the way he holds his cigarette both contemplative and confrontational. His right hand is in a resting position, but it's not resting. It might be anxiously holding on to something, but it's almost a fist and it is slightly larger than his right hand, adding to the overall sense of menace captured in this painting. Beckman's use of dark colors adds to the foreboding quality of the image. The most saturated colors in this painting are red, black, and white, the same colors that were used, sadly, in creating the most commanding brand identity of the 20th century, the Nazi swastika. Whatever the will of this strong man is, we do not want to hang around to find out about it. In Nussbaum's self-portrait, his exaggerated use of perspective dramatically presents us with haunting dark clouds over a scene of crumbling prison-like buildings defaced with raggedly torn jet black pennants strewn over poles and branches, proud in their attempts to enhance the depressing, surrealistic horror unfolding on the cobblestone street beneath them. Our street is littered from front to back with human skeletons, skulls, and undefinable but broken parts of something. Front and center, as if he is serving as the master of ceremonies to this macabre scene, we are greeted face to face with Nussbaum himself, hunching over a podium. Gaunt and with his face painted in a muted pale gray brown, the podium he hangs over has this claw-like skeleton of a human arm and hand just to its right, reaching up as if in a gesture of just desperation to escape from the rubble below it. Cloaked in a rumpled dark cloth, the top of the podium encases the upper parts of larger, bare human bones arranged vertically and orderly, placed side by side, one after the other. They appear almost pre-packaged, possibly foretelling the fate of our doomed and tragic hero, who is leaning over them filled with sadness and despair. Nussbaum uses all of his skills and power, plus every tool in a painter's toolbox, color, perspective, symbolism, imagery, to visually document this stage of his life and to create one of the saddest, most tragic, and most unforgettable paintings ever painted. The look in Nussbaum's eyes show a hint of sorrow and a glimmer of pity about both the human nightmare he's been forced to live through, which is painted symbolically behind him, and about what he is sure his fate will be, also captured symbolically by what is below and in front of him. But there remains a sense of defiance in Nussbaum's eyes, because the triumph of the will does not belong to the Nazis. It belongs to Felix Nussbaum, who had the courage to create this painting, expressing the truth about the worst disaster of the 20th century while living in and then dying, confined to spend his final days on Earth in the most unspeakably nightmarish prison ever, the Auschwitz concentration camp in 1944.
Wow.
The end.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
The end, real.
Yeah, that was wonderful.
Yeah.
Peter, I think you're going to have to go a great distance to top that one.
Well, what can I say? I mean, it was, it's true. I mean, I just, read the truth. Thank you. But boy, oh boy. And thank you, Simon, for showing us these incredible images, the whole semester. So, yeah.
Thanks.
I finally did see the Beckman show this past weekend, and by some weird coincidence, one of the last exhibits he had in 1925 was in Mannheim, Germany, which was the city my father was born and lived in and left in 1928.
Wow, amazing, amazing.
Oh, that's great.
Did you relate to the exhibit?
Yeah, I did. I mean, there were other people there, which really annoys me because I wish I had the whole show to myself.
Out of there.
But yeah, it was incredible paintings. I mean, really incredible. I mean, this painting was painted in 1923, I think, which kind of puts a little curveball into my idea of the most saturated colors being red, black, and white, which were the colors of the swastika, because that didn't come around until 5 years later. But it was incredible painting, really.
Did you see the room with all the prints?
Yeah, I did. It was amazing. Everything was amazing. I reacted more strongly, I think, to the paintings in one of the last rooms, and I think I understood what you meant, Simon, when you said you didn't really get Beckman, because I think in that room, I think I kind of got Beckman. I mean, there was a lot of dark lines and flat space and almost surreal themes that were I don't know, that I was just most moved by that room.
Yeah.
And also the cafe downstairs was great, and the Neue Gallery, they really have good food. So
Yeah, you feel
Did-
like
did you notice-
like you're in Vienna.
yeah, really. I mean, we waited online for 45 minutes to get into the real restaurant, not the cafe part. And
Really?
yeah.
That's
But
great.
you know, because I knew it
Great.
was my wife, Randy said, I feel like we're in Vienna. And
Well, you
that,
saved
yeah.
you saved about $1,500 from taking a trip to Vienna.
Exactly. Now we don't have to go. So
But
Did-
seriously, I
did-
thought your writing was
Mhm.
really at a very, very high level.
thank you. Thank
Yeah.
you very much, Simon. I
Really.
mean, it was just, emotional. I really reacted strongly to the painting.
Yeah.
So
No,
it
that's
just
very,
flowed out of me.
that's very clear. Ron, you seem to want to say something.
No, I was the one thing in the Neues Gallery I thought was very interesting was the statements on the wall of what Beckmann liked.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
wish I had written that down. It was so funny. So funny.
I'd have liked to have photographed it, but you weren't allowed to.
Yeah, you
No,
weren't allowed to
I
take
even
it.
asked if I could take a picture of that, and they said no. And I wish I'd written it down.
I think the first line said Max Beckmann is not a nice person or something to that effect.
Yeah.
And the last one said Max Beckmann still sleeps well at night.
Yeah.
It was very funny.
Does someone want to add something now, a question or comment or anything? I'm leafing through. I can now see you. I've learned so much about using this. I can actually make the pictures bigger. And
You could,
smaller.
yes.
Hey,
I noticed
bravo.
This
that,
is due
yes.
to
Well.
to Len here, who's giving me tutorials on how to use this. And Renee is safely upstairs. She's let me go. And
You did very well, Simon.
yeah, I really hope that many of you will continue, and it's your call. And but I actually I could take it a step further to say that your involvement has pushed me as well. So I've really been pushed to come up with the goods and to make this very meaningful and personal. And so it goes around in circles. And it's been very, very, very enjoyable, honestly.
It has.
Yeah. So listen,
Yes.
take care of yourself. Happy New Year. And
Same to
hope I'll
you.
see some of you in
Thank you.
February.
Yes.
Thank you
Okay.
so much, Simon.
Bravo.
See you later, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Bye.
Wonderful,
Simon, thank you to
Thank you.
everybody.
Bye.
Thank
Yes,
you.
thanks
Bye.
everyone.
Bye.
Take care, everybody.
Thank
Bye.
you, Simon.
Yeah.
Thank
Take
you.
care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.
So long.
Oh, Simon?
Yeah.
Could I ask you a quick question? What was the book that you showed before the class started? I missed that part.
It's called New Objectivity,
Okay.
and it is connected with what I want to do next term, which is to open up the subject in a bigger way.
Mm-hmm.
So
Who's
this
the-
book deals with
The author, Simon?
with the German direction of New Objectivity. But
Mm-hmm.
if you ask me, it goes past Germany into other areas. Like
Mm-hmm.
I could argue that Andrew Wyeth, certain of his images appear to connect. My own images appear to connect. And Lucian Freud, Stanley Spencer. So that's what I'd like to deal with as
Mhm.
one of the subjects next term.
Simon, could you tell us the author or spell his
Yeah,
name?
the author is, it's a Taschen book, Taschen, and the author is Michalski, Michalski, and it's a very good book, very, very nice book. My book is soft cover. The soft cover has this picture of Otto Dix on the cover.
Okay,
Okay.
Yeah.
wonderful.
There are many questions I would like to ask you, Ron,
Sure.
but it's going to be, I have to save it for another time.
Okay, good. I
About
stayed
your-
on in case you had any that you wanted to ask tonight.
Well, it's about your photographic collection, or
Mhm.
interest in photography, and I assume that you have other photographs.
Many.
Yes, yes. And do you have photographs of Weston?
I have a couple of others. Again, they are printed by Cole Weston, by his son.
Yeah, yeah.
These are now selling for close to, or perhaps more than $100,000 a piece.
Wow, wow.
So that they're out of reach for most of us human beings. But luckily, at the time that they were offered, they were really, I think, as I recall, about $1,200. And it's wonderful to have them.
Yeah, yeah. It's beautiful. And are your photographs mainly black and white?
Primarily.
Yeah. That's very interesting. And are they in Washington?
Yes. Well, there's some in New Mexico, but the lion's share are here in Washington, where they were acquired.
Yeah, I'd like to see them.
Happy to show them to you.
Yes, I will take you up on it. So we'll hopefully take each other up.
Okay. Well, have a wonderful holiday, Simon.
Yes, yes, and thanks for your response, Ron, today.
Thank you.
Yeah, okay. Take care of yourself, okay?
Thank you, Simon. Ron, nice to meet you.
Good to meet you,
Yeah.
Frank.
Good night.
Thanks, Frank.
Bye.
And also for no, never mind. Okay, so take care of yourself.